Welcome back. In this video, we're going to blast through the first set of flags, just a quick demonstration on using them. These are very simple, just kind of going through the motions to say that we did. I've separated these flags into what I call different levels. It's for lack of thinking deeply on my terms. I have level 1, 2, 3, 4. They just from basic to more advanced. So the level 1 flags are going to be like the -P, or the pattern flag, the lowercase l for listing patterns, the uppercase L for listing models, the uppercase U, uppercase U for updating the patterns, the copy flag, the model flag, output flag, the language flag, the stream flag. Probably go over what stitching is at the end, maybe the attachment flag. So let's just get into it. We will jump into a spot where we have some files, like in our some files directory. Here we have the mfab readme broken apart into different sections just for some content to demonstrate using these flags. Getting right into it, if we use fabric, we do, the streaming flag, you could -s or -- stream. Either one. If you use the long forms, you can't stack them like you can if you use the short flags like -s. You could do -s space -p. You're absolutely free to do that, but when you use the short forms, you can also stack them, which is kind of nice, for speeding things up, because there's sometimes this can be a lot of typing at the terminal, you know what I mean? So we'll do the pattern flag, which is, we're using the streaming and pattern flag, but 2 birds, 1 stone. And we'll do, let's do summarize. And we're gonna send one of these files. Let's just do the first section of the mfab readme. And one way we can do that, the simple way, the most direct way, we're in a future video, we're gonna go over the many ways that you can actually structure a fabric command. But we can't go in every direction at once here. We're just gonna use like a standard catting a file via a pipe, which just looks like this: cat s1. And then the pipe symbol. So this is how you pipe a file. And these are just, I don't have them ending in .txt or .md, but they're just regular plain text files. So this is the standard, kind of like the default way that has always been shown to people or used by people that I've ever seen. I use a lot different. I do file redirections is simpler for me. This cat, and then the S, the section 1 of the mfab readme, piping it to the fabric. And then here, let's get back, let's focus here, right? So we're using the stream and the pattern flags all at once here. And so we can run that. And that's the output we get. Now, remember, we could also do, if we're working in the terminal only, we have the glow tool installed on our system here. So we could be doing this for a little bit nicer output, as you can tell. So we just had the fabric tool run the summarize pattern and stream. Streaming doesn't matter if we're piping to glow, but we cat the first section of the mfab readme to the fabric summarize pattern, then we pipe that to glow for some nice looking output here. We get the expected output for such a command. And we also have we'll look at the -l. It could be list patterns here. This just kind of lists them like that. That could also be the -l. It's the same thing. And we could pipe this to less, or any number of things. But if we piped it to less, then we could scroll up and down it. You know what I mean? And kind of take a look at it. There's various things that we can do with that, but just giving you we're just going to run through these as fast, not as fast as we can, but staying direct and to the point on these, what I consider to be like the level 1 basic flags. So our next one would be the capital L, which is also, the long form is, let's look that up. The long form is list model, no equal signs. That's what I was kind of checking for. So you can see the way I'm breaking these up, that we're not going straight down the list. We're going in, I kind of broke these apart into what I think the simpler, the more basic and straightforward flags are. So at any rate, we would do fabric -capital L. This lists all the models that we have available to the system. Oh, and that's the API key that I put in the last video. I burned that key, so now I was wondering why the OpenAI models weren't on here. That's because I burned that key and I didn't hook up a new API key yet. This is right here where it lists this URL. This is something you kind of want to remember, because that can be kind of goofy to get to navigate to online when you're trying to find that actual place, that actual web page. So at any rate, that's the -L flag, just listing the models for you. The update, we could run fabric-u. This should just update all our pattern directory. The long way to do this would be to go into the setup menu and go through the initial, the setup download process. That would do the same thing, but this is just doing it real quick. It still takes the same amount of time, I suppose, but you don't have to navigate through the setup menu. You right at the command line, you can do -U, and it will update and repopulate the patterns directory from the GitHub repo. Let's see, the next one would be copy. So if we ran, let's see, where's a good one? Right here. We could, on this one, if we just did the -C, this could be what? It's dash copy. I don't think there's an equal sign. But, you could run this, and it's supposed to copy it to your clipboard. So -C, and let's see if that is in, the PB paste tool, which we'll hook up in the future. But right now, the PB paste, it's under the hood. It's Xclip, I think, but we'll run PB paste to, I don't know, let's, so as you can see, just pasting it to the terminal, that is the content that we had gotten. So just adding the -C on the end of any fabric command, you know what I mean? It'll take that response. Not only is it spitting it out into the terminal, but it's also just copying that response to the clipboard. And, if we ran, why is the sky blue just an inline? And let's take this down to raw query. Well, we have a bit of a response here, starting with one of the most intriguing and enduring questions in human history, ending with, was that answer enlightening? Let's see if it's the same thing. So we just PB pasted it back into the terminal to make sure that the -C copy command worked correctly, and it does. It just copies it, and that's useful for various things, for using PB paste, and also if you went into, let's see here, go into this LibreOffice Writer. And if it's all right there, we can just, right click and select paste, and we paste that whole response that was spit out into the terminal. We can paste that into any word processor, text editor. It doesn't matter. It's in your system clipboard, so you can paste it in just about anywhere. Paste it in your browser if you had a reason to. So that's how that one works. Clear our screen up. So the model, we've had a couple times that we could have used this, especially when we were doing the one of our real world case studies using the Fabric tool, to change models on the fly in scripts. The Fabric -M or I think it's --model $, or just for the short flag is just -M, and then you would specify the model. Like, if we had, I don't know, let's see if Mistral 7B, if I'm typing in the format right or not, see if that worked. And, we could also do -SP and put in raw query. See if I did that right, if I did that correctly here, list models. And it is Mistral. There's many times in some of the very recent videos that we did, specifically the real world, the case study, there's so many times looking back on it that I wish I would have run this dry run to show you what it was sending, and then it helps you better understand the output that you're getting. But at any rate, this is just the raw query pattern, and then my inline question. Why is the sky blue? Pretty simple. And it did use the Mistral model. I'm just going to unhook this one, so that's not configured anymore. We'll drop out. And so, yeah, you can see plainly that it's using the -M. If this weren't working, it would be kicking us an error, and it's, running the dry run. It's using the Mistral 7B. So that's how you use that inline. And that one's pretty valuable, because it can be kind of a pain to remember all, exactly how to type out all the different model names. Unless, what I've never tried? Mistral 7B was, which, let's see what number that is. It's number 7. I wonder if you can put in, this wouldn't be on everyone's system. This number sequence is just on my system, given the number of models I have in the order that it's listing them in. But I wonder if we could put in, that would be really cool, actually, if we could. We'll try 7. Oh, nope. What about with those brackets? I mean, this would be, I've never thought of this. This would be really cool if this works. Nope. Unfortunately. That would have been cool, though, if you could just put in the index number, I guess you'd say, of the model on your own system. That would have been really nice. Because then you can, if you don't change, if those things don't change on you a lot, then that index number would have been a really easy way and fast way to use that flag. But, can't have it all. Moving on, the output is pretty simple. Let's so we do this, and if you're doing output, you could use the streaming flag still, because it'll still output to the terminal here. But we could just add the -O and put the response and call it a text file. Oop. We have to take off the -M too, the requested model. Why is the sky blue? So we'll run that now, and it says it's written to response text. Starting, the question is, why is the sky blue, and ends in longer wavelengths. So we have the response text here, and the question, why is the sky blue, and ending in longer wavelengths. So that entire thing was correctly spit out to a file that we specified. Pretty simple stuff. Let's see, the -G, by default it uses English. So, the -G, if you were to switch languages, or the, I think it's language, I think there's an equal sign on this one, EN for English, or whatever your language code is. That's pretty straightforward one. We already did the streaming. I don't use a lot of the multimodal models in terms of like identifying, I guess, what's in a picture. I don't do that a whole lot, but that would be the -A flag. And then if you had a file, you would put that file, say it was a PNG or a JPEG, if it was some pic.jpg, if it was in the directory that you're in. Otherwise, you would put the absolute path to it, putting out home, newbie, pictures, and then the name of the file name of the picture. That -A is also attachment, and I'm pretty sure there's an equal sign, and then you would type the file name right after with no spaces. That's a pretty simple one if that's something you want to use. These are super, super basic, and that's kind of why I consider them like level 1. There's not much to them. Really the ones that you're going to be using a lot. And you will use these a lot, but they're just your most fundamental ones. Obviously, the -P or -- pattern for the long form. Obviously, that's kind of like the flag, right? For obvious reasons. It's a pattern framework, this whole thing. So you got to, that one's, even if it were complicated to use, I'd have to put it in the very first video on using all the flags. It's kind of like the most important one, right? But all these others, they're just the most fundamental, the basic ones that you're going to use all the time. If you're not in English, you'd be using that one, the G flag or the language long form. But the other ones, there's something that they're kind of, aside from the pattern flag, all these ones are like peripheral. They don't. You add them on in specific circumstances. In those circumstances, you would be using these basic flags a lot. But I don't know. My mind just kind of looks at them as kind of peripheral. You're not changing the model very often without changing the default model. At least I'm not, I guess. The copy flag, there are times when I use that a lot in a specific circumstance, but it's more of a peripheral thing. Updating the patterns. I generally do that once a month, I guess. Listing models, I use that one, the -L. I'm using that if I'm using the -M flag, because I need to find how to spell out, type out the model, things like that. The list patterns, I don't often use that because I use, the Ranger tool, which I have alias to FS, just short, mnemonic for file system. When I want to go in and take a look at things, at the actual patterns, I go, just by sheer force of habit, I go right in and I take a look at these things directly in this Ranger. It's a file system navigator, but it's a tool. And this one that, if you're following along with me, specifically with the Fabric tool, the Ranger file system navigator, it's become like the most prominent tool that I use when I'm doing anything with Fabric at all. So there's a lot of helper tools that that I'm going to introduce. I don't know if they'll be tucked into the series, or if it'll just be kind of like a separate short series on the helper tools that are kind of necessary to understand things the way I understand them, at least. But by far and away, probably the most prominent tool is this tool right here that we're in, the Ranger File System Navigator. By far, it's the most important tool for visually seeing everything that's going on with this Fabric system and your system in general, an Ubuntu system like we're on, for demonstrating and learning all of this. It makes it too easy, just too easy. So that's about it. Enough rambling. But I guess what we could do. We could do some stitching here. Let's say that we wanted to do, let's cat the S2, the section 2 of the mfab readme to, let's say we do, and now if we're stitching, which means sending the results of a Fabric command that we're about to do right here, and then piping that to yet another Fabric command, the output of that will be the input of the next one, then streaming doesn't do you a whole lot of good here. So we will leave the streaming flag out. Extract wisdom and pipe that to summarize. And so it took the section 2 of the mfab readme, and we extracted some wisdom out of it, and then the results of that were sent to the summarize pattern, which is accurately a one-sentence summary, a couple main points, and a couple takeaways. That's the format of that summarize pattern. So the extract wisdom pattern obviously would be a lot more content, you know what I mean? So that's just how you can, just showing you how to stitch. And not that we did anything super useful right here. There are a lot of circumstances where stitching is really, really useful, like in our real world use case. As that script has been further iterated in the real world, there's actually a whole bunch of stitching that, piping from one Fabric command to the next. There's all kinds of stitching that goes on in that real world use case, actually. So stitching is, as you get into more complex workflows anyhow, stitching is a super, super important and useful thing for shaving a bunch of time off and just automate, just automation in general, so you don't have to code or manually take the results from one and run it through the next. You just, in one command, you stitch them together with pipes. Pretty simple, but very, very powerful. You know what I mean? So at any rate, that'll be it for this video. I've already took too long to do these simple things. So we'll see you over in the next one.